I want to talk about what you're going to say. So when you get into that number loop, when you get into that iterative process where you have a policy idea, you are speaking with somebody at CBO, you're speaking possibly with one of us at the Fiscal Lab, we're helping to refine that process, helping to take your idea and work it from something that is an idea for policy into something that can be calculated according to a model that can be condensed. So I want you to think about this session as just a brief tour of the factory floor. This is so that you know what exists on the floor of the CBO factory, the different sections of the factory, so that when that request comes in, this is how they're going to think about it, how they're going to direct the request. You don't need to know exactly how the models work, certainly not at a level needed to reproduce them. As somebody said earlier, like, you're not going to walk away from these sessions with a PhD, but you at least need to know enough to know what's going on. In the same way that when you take your car to a mechanic, you need to be able to make a decent request, show that you know enough about how a car is repaired so that you're not taken for a ride. All right, so picture this. You clock out of work for the weekend, you head out, you're having dinner, you're relaxing, you're ready, you get a text message. Hey, it's from your boss. I have an idea. What if we had 3% GDP growth? Is that enough to balance the budget? And they say, I'd like a result by the weekend. Right? By the end of the weekend, come in on Monday, I need you to have this together. You don't have a lot of time. You need a rough idea. How would you go about figuring out what you need? So, I want to start off here with give you a few minutes of just very minimal instruction and have you think through a couple of questions to get started. A good practice for the workshop is that, like, you get a chance to take what we talked about and start to work through it. I've been through many lectures where I've nodded along with the professor going, yeah, that makes sense. And then I go and I get to start working on it. I'm like, oh, actually, I have no idea where to start. So think through something like that. We are here within the room. You can ask us to point you in the right direction, but I want to give you a sense to think through this first. I then have subsequent answers to point you in the right direction. But you should be able to find the relevant data on the CBO website, do some quick calculations, and find out, will 3% GDP growth balance the budget? When people talk about GDP growth, when you pay attention to what the BEA reports, and they say every year there's, GDP was 2%, 2.5%. Is that nominal or real? That's real. So this GDP figure here is going to grow faster than the real. It's going to be real plus inflation. When people are talking about, CBO has a long-term projection that settles on real GDP growth of 1.8% per year. So 3% real GDP growth would be even 1.2% above that. So if you just have a nominal GDP figure to work with and you assume 2% inflation, which is the Federal Reserve's target, you could just say, let's do 5% GDP growth, 5% nominal GDP growth. While CBO has a very detailed procedure for calculating the revenues as a percent of GDP, you could just default to using revenues as a long-term average. So within the budget and economic outlook, they show you, hey, here's the post-war average for revenues as a percent of GDP, the post-war average for outlays, and compares the difference. But if you just use the 17.3% post-war average for revenues, that'll give you a ballpark figure. Okay, so was everyone able to take this big table and extract what's relevant? Just quick estimate, top line revenues, top line outlays. make something that calculates the deficit based off of that, and extract nominal GDP. Okay. So then, if you've got all of that put together, you could use the CBO table for your baseline. Then you want to copy it and create an alternative where you change GDP to grow 5% per year. Has anyone gotten through that yet? Okay.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Yes, good.